I hope that you are going to have some note paper and a pen ready and be ready to take some notes, because I think that this webinar will really help you. My goal with this is just to educate you and teach you about your hormones and your neurotransmitters and what you can do for yourself. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Cami Balick. I'm an ANCB board certified traditional naturopath, and my specialty is just in helping women balance their hormones, and my passion is really to just educate you and teach you about what you can do. So I'm going to present a slideshow. Some note paper and a pen ready and be ready to take some notes, because I think that this webinar will really help you. My goal with this is just to educate you and teach you about your hormones and your neurotransmitters and what you can do for yourself. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Cami Balick. I'm an ANCB board certified traditional naturopath, and my specialty is just in helping women balance their hormones, and my passion is really to just educate you and teach you about what you can do. So I'm going to present a slideshow. Okay, we're ready here. So these are what we're going to talk about today. These are the major hormones that affect women. So we're going to talk about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, and your cortisol to start with, and then we'll talk about the neurotransmitters. So first, we'll talk about estrogen. Estrogen is our growth hormone, and we have three kinds of estrogen in the body. We have estrone, or estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So you'll see the different kinds of estrogen here. The first one is the estrone, or the E1, and this one is actually a less biologically active than the estradiol. This is made in the ovaries, and it's the most prevalent estrogen in postmenopausal women. So it is actually the estrogen that we need that converts to both estradiol and estriol. The second type of estrogen that we have is estriol, or E2, and it is the most biologically active estrogen in the body. It's also produced in the ovaries, and it's converted from testosterone. So it's really important that your testosterone level is correct too in order to make all of these different kinds of estrogen. This one is biochemically interconvertible. So it is the same family as the estrone, but your body will make it and use it as it needs to. The last type of estrogen we have is E3, and it's the weakest of the three. It actually is the estrogen of pregnancy, and it also is a conversion of the estrone and the estradiol. The estrogen quotient is really important to know about, and so in the 60s and 70s, Dr. Henry Lemon noted that women who developed breast cancer actually had a significantly reduced level of E3. He also found that rats that were treated with E3 prior to radiation and chemical exposure had a reduction in the development of many different cancers and mammary cancers. So since then, research has shown that E3 almost exclusively stimulates our estrogen receptors, or is an anti-carcinogenic receptor. But what's more important than just the E3 for your breast health is actually the estrogen quotient. So one thing to look at with your estrogens is what the quotient is, and this is the estrogen quotient is your EQ equal to your E3 divided by your E1 plus E2. So how do you figure that out? One of the ways is to do any kind of testing that will test all three of your estrogens. And you want to have tested your E1 and your E2 and your E3, and then you can do the math. If your estrogen quotient is less than 1.0, you're at a higher risk for breast cancer than if your estrogen quotient is greater than 1.5. So it's really important to keep your estrogens in balance. So now let's talk about progesterone. Progesterone has a lot of functions in the body. It actually promotes a healthy sleep pattern. So if you're not sleeping, one of the things that could be off is your progesterone. Progesterone also helps reduce our cholesterol. It inhibits coronary vasospasms. It protects against coronary hyperreactivity. It works as a diuretic in our body. If you're finding that you're retaining water, one thing that we can look at is your progesterone. And it also promotes glucose utilization and improves insulin resistance. So your progesterone has other functions as well. It enhances your thyroid hormone. It improves your estrogen receptor, so that means that your brain receptors know how much estrogen that you have in your body and how much progesterone you have in your body. Progesterone is really important to oppose the effects of estrogen in the breast, the brain, and the endometrial tissue as well. And it increases our scalp hair, it helps burn fat, and it's a natural antidepressant when your progesterone level is correct. So because these are the functions of progesterone, if you have any of these symptoms, it can be that your progesterone is imbalanced. Some other things that progesterone does is it actually is essential for maintaining pregnancy, and it promotes normal cell death. One thing that you hear a lot about nowadays, or you should, is estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance refers to an excess of estrogen relative to the progesterone. So this is really common in women of reproductive years, and it's really actually common now because of all the ways that we get estrogen in our diet. So with women that have PMS, menopause, or if they're on a hormone replacement and usually on estrogen, they can become estrogen dominant if they have oversupplementation or if they have a poor estrogen progesterone balance. Now, estrogen dominant doesn't mean you have too much estrogen in the body. It means that you have too much estrogen compared in ratio with your progesterone. So some of the ways we get estrogen dominant is our environment. A lot of the plastics that we use, a lot of food that's kept in plastic actually absorbs a different kind of estrogen from the plastic. A lot of the chemicals, the pesticides, hormones that are added to our food, we are exposed to estrogen all the time on a daily basis. So estrogen dominant is becoming more and more common. Also, we can get or have poor estrogen metabolism. So we get estrogen and then we hold on to it in our fat cells. And another thing is our fat cells actually make estrogen. So most people think that their fat cells are just sitting there not doing anything, but the bad thing is that our fat cells can actually make estrogen too. We can also become estrogen dominant with a poor diet if we have an insulin resistant problem, if your blood sugar is off. So one thing to look at is that ideal progesterone to estrogen ratio. So the best ratio for women should be a 200 to 600 range or somewhere in the middle. The problem with the estrogen dominant can actually be other things, not just you feel imbalanced, but other diseases down the road, such as cancer and Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, or cardiovascular disease. So it's really important that you have a good progesterone to estrogen ratio. Some signs and symptoms of an estrogen dominant or just the excess of estrogen to an insufficient amount of progesterone. It doesn't mean your estrogen is too high. Again, it just means your ratio is off. So some of the signs and symptoms you might have are accelerated aging. You're getting gray hairs faster. You see wrinkles faster. If you feel anxiety, if you notice a bloating, if you have an irregular cycle, if you have irritability, if you have mood swings, you're constantly up and down, if you've had or had in the past any ovarian cysts, and then also if you have been told you have an increased risk of any of these things. So blood clots, gallstones, postpartum depression. And some things you might just feel with the estrogen dominance or notice is weight gain, breast tenderness, decreased libido, libido, fibrocystic breasts or sore breasts, uterine fibroids, food cravings, headaches, heavy menstrual periods, hypersensitivity, or you've been told you have increased triglycerides. This would be a normal menstrual cycle of your estrogen to progesterone. We already talked a little bit about the causes of estrogen dominance, but some other causes, if you're premenopausal, can actually be stress or adrenal dysfunction and poor diet. If you're perimenopausal, it can actually be just the lack of ovulation and erratic cycles and your estrogen fluctuating without the adequate amount of progesterone. And if you're postmenopausal, the causes of estrogen dominance can be an imbalance of your estrogen to your progesterone ratio, and then also any ovarian production of estrogen. So now let's talk about testosterone. A lot of people don't think of testosterone as a female hormone, but testosterone is actually secreted in the adrenal glands and the ovaries. And our testosterone decreases with age, or if you've had a hysterectomy, or if you're on any oral estrogens. So it can also become elevated in women with insulin resistance or diabetes. So the functions of our testosterone are, like I said, it's made in the adrenal glands and the ovaries. It's actually one of the hormones that converts our estrogen, like I talked about in the beginning. So that's really important that your testosterone is in a correct ratio. Our testosterone improves our brain function and also helps the balance of our neurotransmitters. And we're going to talk about neurotransmitters a little bit later. You have to have the right amount of testosterone for your sleep to be correct. And it also is what gives us a sense of well-being and vitality. So if you don't feel at peace, if you don't feel that well-being and you're not sleeping, a lot of times it can be that your adrenal glands aren't making the correct amount of testosterone. And that's why I always talk about the adrenal glands so much. It's also essential for libido and arousal and orgasms. It inhibits our fat accumulation. It helps our bone density, and it helps us burn fat. So it's really important that we have our testosterone at a correct level for all of these good things. The next hormone I want to talk about is DHEA, and it's also one that's made in the adrenal glands. And DHEA serves as a prohormone for both your testosterone and your estradiol. So like testosterone, the DHEA actually decreases with age, or like all hormones, but it can be elevated in women with insulin resistance too. So it's important to know where your DHEA is, because it being the prohormone for our testosterone and our estradiol, if the DHEA is too low, your testosterone and your estradiol are going to be too low as well. DHEA is really important, again, for our sexual health, for libido, for arousal, for a sense of motivation and well-being. It also improves our immune function. It improves our sleep function. It improves our memory function. And after menopause, almost all of our estrogen comes from DHEA through conversion. So one of the things I supplement sometimes with people that show low DHEA is actually DHEA, or you can look at the adrenal glands and get them functioning correctly so that they make the DHEA correct. Also, DHEA has a role as our stress management hormone. So DHEA has been shown to elevate our moods, it calms our emotions, and it increases our alertness when it's in the correct balance. So if you're feeling like your mood is low, or your emotions aren't calm, or your brain is not alert, then DHEA is one of the hormones that you want to look at. DHEA actually, during stress, or it's more helps your mood and more helps your physical preparedness as well. It helps our minds cope more evenly with stress, and it helps improve our memory. So if you're not feeling like those are up to par, then DHEA is one of the things to look at. So these are some symptoms of a DHEA or testosterone deficiency. So if you're feeling like you don't have any motivation, or you have body aches all the time, you have decreased mental clarity and function, you have decreased libido, sexual pleasure is decreased, you have a decrease in muscle mass or your stamina, a diminished sense of well-being, a depressed mood, incontinence as well. If you've been told or you think you have fibromyalgia, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, you have an increased risk of arthritis or feel like you have arthritis, you feel fatigued or tired all the time, you have osteoporosis or osteopenia, thinning of the skin, vaginal dryness, short-term memory loss, disturbed sleep, or hot flashes, these are all symptoms of a DHEA testosterone deficiency. And this is what I see a lot of the women that come in to see me or that we do lab tests on. Most of the time it's a DHEA deficiency because the adrenal glands have been so stressed. So these are some more symptoms of an excess of DHEA now. So if you're feeling depression, a disturbed sleep, high levels of triglycerides, an increased risk of breast cancer or heart disease, increased abdominal fat, if you're seeing acne, you have an irritable mood, you're losing your scalp hair, or if you've been told that you have or have had in the past any PCOS, which is the polycystic ovarian syndrome, you've had ovarian cysts, or you're seeing an increase in facial hair or body hair, then it can actually be an excess or too much DHEA in your body. So it's always important to have everything in balance. Let's talk about insulin resistance just a little bit. So insulin resistance is when your brain doesn't know how much blood sugar or how much sugar is in your blood. So if your brain isn't able to read and be sensitive to your insulin levels, then it can actually cause you to crave more sugar, resulting in an elevated circulating blood glucose or insulin levels. So if your blood sugar is imbalanced, then you could have an insulin resistant. The problem is that elevated insulin levels lead to issues and problems too. So when we have elevated insulin levels in the blood, this can decrease our sex hormones and the production of them in the liver. It has a direct increase ovarian production of testosterone. It has an indirect increase in ovarian production of testosterone, and it also is with our binding receptors in the adrenal cortex stimulating the production of DHEA. So upper range elevated testosterone or DHEA levels. So it's really, really important that we have good diets, and it's really important that we keep our insulin under control and watch our sugar levels as well. The other hormone made in the adrenal glands is actually cortisol. Many people think of cortisol as a bad hormone because you've heard it causes the weight gain around your waist. And that's true, but cortisol also has two modes of operation. It has the proactive mode, so it promotes coordination of our cardiac. It helps with our sleep-wake cycle and our food intake, and it's involved in the process of underlyingly selective attention, integration of our sensory information, and response selection. So what this means is that it is what helps us wake up, it's what gives us our energy, it helps metabolize our food, it helps keep our body going, and then it should decrease slowly throughout the day, and at the end of the day we should have little cortisol and go to sleep. The reactive mode is it actually helps our ability cope or adapt to and recover from stress. So if you've heard of the flight or fight hormone, cortisol is that. It's what helps us recover from stress and helps us adapt to stress. So that is why whenever you're stressed, your body makes cortisol. So the role of cortisol in our stress adaptation is when cortisol levels are chronically too low or too high, the transmission is impaired in the brain, and so the outflow is reduced. And this results in symptoms that affect our energy and our mood and our memory and our food cravings. So it's important that cortisol is in balance and that we know our cortisol is high in the morning and decreases slowly throughout the day. And I'll show you some charts of that in a little bit. So we all have a ton of stress these days, and stress actually messes up our body in so many ways. But stress really has an effect on our immune system, and the more that we're stressed, the more we weaken the immune system, and it just becomes a constant cycle, and it makes our body have to work really hard to maintain a balanced system. And when we're under stress all the time, that constant demand is so much on our body that we become resistant, and then that is when you become fatigued or when your energy is low. So here's that cortisol graph I was talking about. So if you look at the chart on the left, this would be a perfect cortisol graph. If we were to test your cortisol 4 times throughout the day, at 8 o'clock in the morning, noon, afternoon, and then right before bed, it should be high and then slowly drop throughout the day. Most people that come in to see me or that we do these cortisol tests on will show actually the graph on the right. And a lot of them, if you look, their cortisol is not high enough in the morning, and that's why they're fatigued all day long. So there's several phases of adrenal fatigue, and this is one thing I talk about because it's so common. So phase 0 is a healthy adrenal response. There's nothing going on with your adrenal glands. They are working like they should. They make the cortisol like they should. They're making all of your other hormones, testosterone, DHEA, all of that correctly. And when you're stressed, your body's able to respond to it. That's where we want you to be. Phase 0, it would be perfect. A lot of people fall into these other phases. So phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3. Phase 1 is your body is in flight or fight all the time, and you're making stress hormones all the time, or an early adrenal fatigue where you have your cortisol is just slightly off. And then phase 2 is that you have no or low morning cortisol. And phase 3 is where you're just completely in hypoadrenia. Your adrenals are just so tired that they're not able to work for you at all. So this would be a healthy adrenal chart. Again, high in the morning and dropping throughout the day, so low when you go to sleep. With the flight or fight, this was the chart we see. So the morning one is still perfect, but then the other samples continue to stay high throughout the day. And then sometimes we see an HPA axis dysfunction, which means that the cortisol maybe starts out where it should or starts out a little bit lower than it should, but then throughout the day it raises much higher. So this is just some different charts of adrenal fatigue. And this would be the hypoadrenia, where your adrenals are just so tired they're not working for you anymore. So high cortisol makes us feel bad. Low cortisol actually makes us stop feeling. Both of them put us into the survival mode, and neither place is where you want to be. You want to make sure that your cortisol is right where it should be so that you're balanced. One of the things I do in my office is actually a saliva hormone test that tests all 4 of the cortisol throughout the day, and this is something you can do at home. And then I'm also giving the $50 coupon for attending this webinar. So now let's talk about, I'm going to skip through a couple of these things, and let's talk about neurotransmitters here. So I'm going to skip through the menopause ones, but that's also something that the lab test will help you with. So if you have any of these symptoms, it can be an insufficient amount of estrogen or progesterone, and that's when it's important to have your hormones tested. So if you're feeling aches and pains, depression, tearfulness, fatigue, headaches, if you're feeling heart palpitations, if you have hot flashes or night sweats, if you have a mental fogginess, a short-term memory loss, you walk into the room and forget why you just walked in there. If you're noticing some incontinence, some vaginal dryness, bone loss, or you're having sleep disorders, meaning you have trouble going to sleep or staying asleep, these can be symptoms of an insufficient estrogen or progesterone or the ratio of the two. So it's important that if you're feeling those symptoms that you get to the cause and really fix the hormone balance. So when to consider some bioidentical hormone replacement or natural hormone creams is if you're looking for relief of any of those symptoms. And I'm just going to skip down here just to save time. And we'll go talk about neurotransmitters here. So neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers that regulate our physical and our emotional processes. So that includes our movement, our stress response, our mind and memory, our emotions, our energy, our food cravings, pain, and even more. So neurotransmitters function in the central nervous system, and it's the communication between the brain and the body's glands, the organs and the muscles. So neurotransmitters are released from neurons and they travel across a small space and they reach the target cell and then they tell it what to do. So they're really, really important to be in balance so that they're telling your body what to do. If we have an inadequate neurotransmitter function, this disrupts the signal to target the tissue and has a profound influence on our overall health and well-being, and it really, really affects our moods. I found this really interesting, so I wanted to share it. They're kind of old statistics, but in 2007, $25 billion were spent on antidepressants. And in 2009, US doctors wrote more psychiatric prescriptions than there were people in the United States. And that to me is really sad because one of the biggest things that I help people with is depression and the well-being, the anxiety, panic attacks, all of that are caused by your neurotransmitters being off. So if you just balance the neurotransmitters, then you don't have all of the symptoms that the antidepressants are there to stop. This is some other really sad statistics. The rate of antidepressant use in the United States has actually increased 400% over the last 2 decades. Currently, 11% of Americans over the age of 12 take an antidepressant medication, and 23% of women aged 40 to 59 take antidepressants. So let's talk about our neurotransmitters. These are the 3 most common ones. We have norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. Our norepinephrine is our alertness, our concentration, and our energy neurotransmitter. You see that in the purple circle. And if you look at the green circle, this is our serotonin. It is our happiness and our good feeling neurotransmitter. And if you look at the blue circle, our dopamine, it's our pleasure, our reward, and our motivation or our drive neurotransmitter. All of these work together for our attention, our cognitive function, which is our brain function, our appetite, our sex, and our moods and aggression. If these are imbalanced in any way, that's when we feel the anxiety, the irritability, the depression, the panic attacks, the tight chest, and also pain. So one of the things that I recommend that you do if you have any of these symptoms is do a neurotransmitter test. And neurotransmitter test really gives us a successful assessment for your treatment in what amino acids or nutrition that your body is low in. So if you're feeling any of these symptoms, the anxiety, depression, fatigue, insomnia, if you have addictions, food addictions or drug addictions, if you have trouble losing weight or you can't gain weight, if you have cravings or poor impulse control, if you have a cognitive impairment, poor memory, lack of mental clarity, the inability to focus, or chronic pain, headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, any of these symptoms are a sign that you have a neurotransmitter imbalance. So let's talk about these main neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, GABA, and glutamate are the main ones that I look at. So these are your neurotransmitter pathways here. So how do we treat neurotransmitters? You can either guess on your own if you have some of these imbalances, and I'm gonna give you the amino acids and cofactors that you can just go buy at the health food store. Or if you're really bad, I can help you by testing you. So after evaluation, the best course of action is to target the imbalance with the precursors and nutrients which really remedy the problem. So what I look at is amino acids, the cofactors to go with them, and then herbs if we need them. So the main important ones to help with your neurotransmitters are the amino acid precursors. So these should be taken on an empty stomach at least 30 minutes away from food to really give you the best success. These amino acids actually cross the blood-brain barrier and they interact with that HPA axis in your neurotransmitter regulation. So tryptophan, tyrosine, GABA, taurine, 5-HTP, glutamine, and L-theanine are all good amino acids to add to help. And so you can either just take one or you can take them all together. One of my favorite is actually L-theanine because it works in both ways, and I'll show you that here in just a second. So the cofactors are really important to go with the amino acids. So cofactors are substances essential for the activity of an enzyme. For example, the conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine is driven by the enzyme dopamine, and it requires vitamin C, copper, and B3 to fuel the conversion. So even if you have the right amount, we need your body to have the cofactors to really fuel that conversion. So vitamin C, copper, B3, dopamine, and B vitamins are really important to help you with the dopamine to norepinephrine. So cofactors are really important when the conversions are slow. For example, if the norepinephrine is elevated but the epinephrines are too low, your body isn't converting the norepinephrine to the epinephrine. And then that results in your ratios being elevated. So some cofactors for that conversion are SAMe, magnesium, and also cortisol. So what I like to do is supplement with some SAMe and then also treat the adrenal gland dysfunction. So you'll see here the tryptophan, the tyrosine, the 5-HTP, the dopamine, and then you'll see the cofactors in the pink. So it's really important to have the correct amount of iron, that your MTHF is correct, your Bs are correct, you're taking vitamin C, you're getting enough vitamin D, and then if we need to add the conversions of the SAMe as well. So activated forms of vitamins are essential when providing cofactor support. For example, B6 needs to be given in just the correct form, and folate and B12 should be given in the MTHF form so that you have that cofactor to help with your conversions. If you don't have the cofactor, the conversions aren't going to be there even if you take the correct amount of the amino acids. Some other things that we can add or that you can go get at the health food store are adaptogenic herbs. So adaptogens do exactly what their name suggests. They help the body resist and adapt to stress. To officially be called an adaptogen, a compound must be able to enhance the body's physiology without any adverse side effects. So it has to help the body without any side effects. They have to promote action and help the adrenals and improve the body's ability to handle stress. I really like adaptogens, and these are some that I take myself and that I recommend to my clients. So rhodiola and ginseng are one of my favorites, and Standard Process actually has a supplement that combines the two, and it's a really great combination when you're needing some adrenal help and some boosts in your neurotransmitters. Some other things that you can add that you can just get at the health food store is licorice and ashwagandha and ginkgo. Those are probably my favorites. The nerving herbs actually provide balance also, and they restore the nervous system, but they help your body relax. So these herbs that I just gave you, the rhodiola, the ginseng, the ginkgo, ashwagandha, those are more morning herbs. If you're needing more relaxing, you're having anxiety at night, you have the wired, tired feeling, and you can't go to sleep, then you want to look at the nervine herbs, which actually help the body to relax. So these would be herbs like valerian, passion flower, chamomile, lemon balm, oats, hops, California poppy, lavender, and then kava kava is one of my favorites. With all of this, I was talking about the MTHFR, or the methylation support. It's really important that your body has methylation support, and what this means is that it helps take the food we eat and helps our body utilize it and helps our body make those neurotransmitters out of our food. So if our body doesn't have methylation, it doesn't matter how great your diet is, you're still not going to be making those neurotransmitters correctly. So there's a way to test for the MTHFR gene, but you can also just do the urine saliva test that I have to know if you really need methylation support. So possible supplements to support the methylation include L-methylfolate. This is not folic acid. It's actually recommended that you avoid folic acid if you have a methylation problem or a methylation defect. So your body cannot convert folic acid to the methylfolate, so you need to start directly with the L-methylfolate. And then SAMe is really great for that too. So some combination therapies, if you're having a lot of these imbalances, are to combine your hormone replacement therapy with your amino acids and then even the adaptogenic herbs and the B vitamins. And that will really, really help you feel fantastic and help balance your moods. I talked about L-theanine, but I'm going to talk about it again because this is one that you can go get at the health food store, and it's safe for everybody because as we discussed treatments for highs and low neurotransmitters, L-theanine is repeated for either side. So it's repeatedly recommended if it's high and if it's low, which is really great because if you don't know, then the L-theanine just helps balance you out. L-theanine is actually made from a green tea, and it helps increase our serotonin, our GABAamine, and our dopamine levels. It has a really calming effect on the brain. It helps balance our moods out. It helps create a sense of well-being. It reduces our mental and physical stress response. It improves our brain function. And when combined with caffeine, it actually really helps even double that mindful alertness. So the recommended dose of L-theanine is that it only lasts for a short time. It only lasts in the body 4 to 6 hours. So you may need to take it by dividing the dose a couple times throughout the day. Also, vitamin D is really important as it helps with the expression of our enzymes. So vitamin D is one of those cofactors that helps with all of the conversions that you see here. Fish oils are really important too. So two major components of fish oils are EPA and DHA. EPA is the anti-inflammatory part. DHA actually contributes to the fluidity of our cell membranes. So DHA plays a vital role in the structure and function of the brain, and it has a significant component of nerve cells and helps all of the inflammation in our entire body. It also is has an antidepressant effect on the body, and it's just super important that we're getting enough DHAs and EPAs for every function in our body. So that's one thing that's really important for you to get. So we'll talk about each of these now. Serotonin is the first one. Serotonin functions to help our mood control, our sleep. If it's in the correct balance, then you don't feel any pain, and it also helps the GI tract. Imbalanced serotonin levels, whether they are too high or too low, are what is associated with depression. So this you may find interesting is that serotonin is primarily found in our gastrointestinal tract. So our GI tract actually contains 80 to 90% of the body's serotonin. So if your GI tract is off, your gastrointestinal system, then your serotonin is usually off as well. So some symptoms of imbalanced serotonin are racing and troublesome thoughts, emotional numbness, crying or angry outbursts, thoughts of escaping your current circumstances, obsessive compulsive traits, or if you feel paranoid, like about germs and disease or somebody's behind you. And then some physical changes can be fluctuating in body temperature, aches and pains, cramps, bowel and bladder issues, and a smothering sensation. Also, if you have that depressed mood or even thoughts of suicide, then it's a symptom of imbalanced serotonin. It's important that you get it balanced right away. Low serotonin can actually cause your appetite to change, and also a lack of interest in eating, or if you're craving sweets or carbohydrates, or you have a lack of craving for those as well. The brain actually tries to use sweets and carbohydrates to increase the serotonin levels. So if you're finding that you just want sugar and sugar and sugar, it could be your body's trying to take the sweet and the carbohydrate and increase your serotonin levels just for those few minutes. So increased insulin for a long period of time may trigger the onset of insulin resistance, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and lowers our serotonin level. So if you have a blood sugar issue, or you're craving sweets, or you've been craving sweets for so long that now you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, your serotonin levels are probably off if you're not addressing them or helping them. It can also affect our children's moods as well. So here you will see that L-theanine on both sides of the chart. So to support this serotonin, it's important to know if it's low or high. But if you don't know, the L-theanine actually helps both sides. So if your serotonin is low, then tryptophan helps it. 5-HTP will help increase your serotonin, L-theanine, and then the cofactors needed are iron and the vitamin C, the vitamin D, maybe the MTHF. And then if your serotonin is high, again, the L-theanine is good, and it's important to add those cofactors. So B2, B3, iron, and SAMe as well. So my passion is really to teach people how to increase serotonin in the brain without drugs. I think it's really, really important that you help your body with the correct nutrition, that you get the correct amino acids with the cofactors, and then in addition that you're out in the sun, you're getting some sunlight and some fresh air and exercise, and then also positive mood induction is really important as well. Just being thankful and looking for something to be grateful to. Dopamine is the next one. It actually enhances the reward response. So if the reward response is perceived greater than expected, it could be that your dopamine is too high. But dopamine is our pleasure hormone. It enables us to not only see rewards, but to take action and move towards them. So it's what gives you your motivation, helps with your coordination and your movement. It is what balances our behavior, our sleep, our mood, our attention and learning. So if you're still with me, then your dopamine might be at a good level. Just kidding. Excess dopamine, though, can lead to paranoia. So if you feel paranoid or you feel like someone is out to get you all the time, it can just be your dopamine is too high. A dopamine deficiency causes us to want to go into isolation or have issues with motivation, the inability to finish tasks, a drop in sex drive, forgetfulness. People with low dopamine activity may be more prone to addictions. Other pathological states such as schizophrenia, autism, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorders can all just be from low dopamine. Again, to support the dopamine, it's really important that you just start with that L-theanine. As you'll see, it's on both sides, on the low side and the high side. But it's also important to be tested to know whether your dopamine is too low or too high, so you can add the other ones in here if needed. So the vitamin D is really important, and then your cofactors, your vitamin C, iron, B3, vitamin D, your copper, supporting your body with everything it needs. Norepinephrine and epinephrine are our flight or fight neurotransmitters. They regulate the flight or fight response. They control our attention and our arousal. They regulate our heart rate and blood pressure, and they release glucose from our energy stores. The epinephrine is actually synthesized in the adrenal gland. So again, it's really important that your adrenal glands are functioning correctly so that they are able to make the epinephrine and then also use it correctly. So here's a little question for you here. What do these people have in common? The adrenaline junkies. They all have low levels of epinephrine and epinephrine. So they're looking to raise that with giving their body a little bit of adrenaline. So low levels of norepinephrine and epinephrine can lead to poor attention and memory, decreased concentration, reduced socialization, a loss of alertness, memory problems, depression, pain, and again, that lack of arousal or libido. Excess levels of norepinephrine and epinephrine may lead to some physical symptoms such as palpitations, arrhythmia, headaches, restlessness, cold hands, tremors, hypertension, and then also some mood, cognitive symptoms such as irritability, anxiety, agitation, sleeplessness, the inability to relax, and the lack of mental focus. So it's important that if you're feeling the low or the high that you support the norepinephrine. So low epinephrine, norepinephrine, you want to use that L-tyrosine again, the mocaperinus, L-theanine, vitamin D, and the cofactors of C, copper, and B. If your norepinephrine is high, then again, L-theanine is a good choice to start with, the B vitamins, some iron, some SAM-E. To support the epinephrine, again, the best one that I like to tell you to do is just to use the L-theanine. You'll see the same supplements over and over for all of these. Glutamate is the last one here, and if your glutamate is high, you might be feeling anxiety, insomnia, ADHD, poor concentration, seizures, or it's seen in autism and Alzheimer's. If the glutamate is low, you might be feeling that depression, fatigue, brain fog, addictions or dependency, and slow learning. So glutamate is one that can come from MSG. So this says we all know that MSG can increase glutamate levels, but there's a lot of hidden sources. So you want to make sure that you're not getting any hidden sources of MSG because that will raise your glutamate. So again, the L-theanine, the taurine, your cofactors, and some magnesium are really important if your glutamate is high. If it's low, the best thing you can do is just take L-glutamine to bring it up and to fix your digestive system. So you may have heard of GABA. GABA is a major neurotransmitter in the brain that helps with relaxing and calming. So it's really important that your GABA is in balance if you're not feeling relaxed and calm. Low GABA levels have been found in panic, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, and bipolar disorders. A deficient GABA levels happen because of bad diet, prolonged stress, and even genetics. Elevated GABA will actually contribute to you being too calm, so making you drowsy, a lack of alertness, difficulty concentrating, diminished memory, a dampened mood, a decreased cognitive process. GABA levels become elevated because when our neurotransmitters are too high, then it will cause the other neurotransmitters to become high. So if one's high, it could be causing the GABA to come high. So to address the GABA, it's important that you either just use the L-theanine, or if you know it's low, to add GABA directly. In healthy people, though, GABA does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's in a lot of supplements, but it's not always working correctly. So if mood complaint is part of your hormone imbalance or a neurotransmitter imbalance, then that's when I don't guess and I actually just do the saliva test. So if from these you were able to help yourself and you can just go get what you need from the health food store, then that's great. If you need further help, then I'm actually offering a $50 coupon, and you can just go to my website and use the contact form and contact me if you want to do this hormone test here, and I can mail it to you. So it's a saliva and urine hormone test that you do at home. Then you mail it off the next day to UPS, and then I get the results and we can talk about them over the phone. You don't even need to come in and see me. So if you're feeling like you need some more additional help, you can take advantage of that $50 off and just send me an email about it today. So I hope that this really helped you. Let me just stop the screen share here. I hope that this webinar really helped you learn about your hormones and your neurotransmitters and what you can do for yourself. So if you have any further questions, you can just contact me and go to my website. It's camibalick.com or makinghappyhappen.com. And a lot of this information is also in my book, Happy the New Sexy. If you don't have it, you can find the information in there. But if you need further help, just let me know. So I hoped that this gave you some more knowledge today about yourself. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of the day.